The billionaire's laughter died in his throat the moment the waitress touched her queen. He had promised the room that if she could beat him at chess, he would pay her rent for life. But he never imagined losing, not to Maya, a 28-year-old waitress fighting to afford her daughter's medical care. 4 moves was all she needed. Ahmed Al-Mansur had no idea he had just challenged her late father's chess protege. Maya's entire life had become a countdown. At 28, working double shifts at Dubai's most exclusive restaurant, every dirham she earned was already promised to her daughter's medical bills and her ailing mother back home. The chess book she studied on her break was not a hobby. It was the last thread connecting her to the father who had trained her before he died. So when billionaire Ahmed Al-Mansur laughed and made his impossible offer, no one in that dining room understood what she was about to reveal. The question was never whether she could win. It was why she had ever stopped. The reason Maya had stopped playing chess was asleep on a mattress in a one-room apartment in Deira. Her daughter Amara was 7 years old, with her father long gone and a heart condition that required monthly treatments costing more than Maya earned in tips. Every night after her shift, Maya would sit beside that mattress and count the dates on a medical bill, wondering which dream she would have to bury next. The rent was already 2 months overdue. Her mother in Kerala needed medication that was eating through the last of her savings. And Ahmed Al-Mansur had no idea that the quiet waitress replacing his water glass had once been called the most promising young chess player in her district. Maya had learned the game before she could read. Her father, Ravi, was a chess coach at a modest school, a man who believed the board contained every lesson a child needed. By the age of 9, Maya was beating adult club players. By 12, she had won a state junior championship. By 15, she was playing blindfolded against 3 opponents at once. Her father used to say that Maya did not see pieces the way other players did. She saw patterns, traps, endings. He would sit across from her for hours, testing her memory, drilling openings until they became instinct. But when he died of a sudden heart attack, the board went silent. Then came Amara, born premature and fragile, and Maya traded tournament clocks for double shifts. The girl who once dreamed of becoming a grandmaster now served lunch to men who never looked at her face. Ahmed Al-Mansur was exactly the kind of man who looked past everyone. He had built a real estate empire from a single rented storefront in Sharjah, and now his name was attached to towers that scraped the sky. Worth more than $3 billion, he collected rare cars, private islands, and the attention of everyone who entered a room. Chess had been his private obsession for decades. He owned custom boards made from ivory and ebony, employed a professional chess coach, and had never lost to anyone outside a registered tournament. His circle called him unbeatable. He believed it. That night at the restaurant, he was celebrating a new development deal with 4 other businessmen. They had ordered the most expensive dishes, sent back 2 bottles of wine, and laughed too loudly for the elegant dining room. Maya was covering a double shift, her feet aching, her mind half on her daughter and half on the chess book tucked beneath the service station. During her break, she had been replaying a classic game from memory. Ahmed noticed. He noticed because he always looked for weakness, and a woman studying chess in the middle of a luxury restaurant looked like entertainment. He called her over, not to order but to perform. She stood at the edge of the table while he asked what a waitress could possibly understand about the game. Before she could answer, he made his offer. 1 game, 1 board. If she somehow managed to beat him, he would pay her rent for life. His friends erupted in laughter. The words hung in the air like a dare. Maya felt the old familiar stillness settle over her. She had not sat across from an opponent in years, but her father's voice was still there, calm and clear. She could have walked away. She should have, maybe. But the rent was overdue, her daughter needed medicine, and the man in front of her had just offered to end a lifetime of fear. Maya lifted her chin and asked one question. Did he mean it? Ahmed smiled the way billionaires do when they are absolutely certain they hold every card. He pulled out his phone, called over the manager, and announced that the entire restaurant would witness his victory. A table was cleared near the window, a board was brought from his private collection, and Maya sat down in her uniform. Her hands were steady. Her daughter's face was behind her eyes. Across the board, Ahmed Al-Mansur leaned back and told her she could have the first move as a courtesy. He expected her to tremble. Instead, She pushed her king's pawn 2 squares forward and said, "Your move." Ahmed's smile flickered. That opening was not the move of a beginner, it was the move of a killer, and he had exactly 3 moves left to realize it. Maya did not wait for him to recover. Her second move brought the queen sliding to h5, a move so aggressive it looked like a child's mistake. Ahmed's eyes narrowed. The quiet waitress had chosen violence. He developed his knight to c6, still certain he could crush this novelty. But then her bishop glided to c4, and the entire table seemed to tilt. Every person in the room except Ahmed saw the trap now, the scholar's mate, the oldest humiliation in the game. Ahmed saw it too. He smiled faintly. He had broken this trap 100 times. Instead of defending, he pushed his knight to f6, attacking her queen and daring her to proceed. It was the move of a man showing off. The moment his hand left the piece, Maya took her queen and placed it on f7. The black king could not capture. No piece could block. It was checkmate in 4 moves. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. Ahmed did not move. For a long moment he did not even breathe. Then he looked up and the arrogance was gone. In its place was something almost like reverence. He asked again, slower this time, "Who taught you?" Maya's voice was barely above a whisper, "My father." Ahmed closed his eyes, and then he said the words that changed everything. "Ravi." It had to be Ravi. The room fell into a second, deeper silence. Ahmed's friends exchanged glances. They knew that name. Ahmed had told the story 1,000 times, usually after too much wine. The only man who had ever beaten him with such clean, pitiless logic. The school chess coach from Kerala who had taught a young Ahmed a lesson he carried for 30 years. Maya looked at him, stunned. She did not know her father had ever crossed paths with Ahmed Al-Mansur, but Ahmed remembered every detail. It was the final match of a local tournament. Ravi had given him no chance. After the game, Ravi had walked around the table and said, "You play with your hands, learn to play with your skull." Ahmed had never forgotten those words. Now the same elegant brutality was sitting across from him in a restaurant uniform. Ahmed stood. He walked around the table and extended his hand. "Your father was right about me. It took you 4 moves to prove I still play with my hands." He turned to the manager and declared that Maya would never pay rent again. Not in this city, not anywhere. He would arrange the legal paperwork before midnight. His friends started laughing, but this time the sound was thin. One of them, a developer named Karim, pulled out his phone and said the video was already going live. Ahmed told him to put it down, but the clip had already escaped. Within an hour, it was on 5 different accounts. Within 3 hours, it had crossed 1 million views. By morning, the world had a new hero. The footage of Maya in her server's uniform, completely calm as she dismantled a billionaire, spread across every platform. News anchors called it the moment of the year. Former chess champions praised her technique. Comment sections filled with thousands of people demanding the full story. A grainy photograph surfaced of Maya at a junior championship, holding a trophy with her father. The caption read, "Forgotten prodigy returns." The story was no longer just about a bet. It was about a daughter carrying the weight of a dead dream. But Maya was not watching the views. She was in the emergency room at 4 in the morning because Amara's fever had spiked. The hospital wanted another down payment. The money from Ahmed had not yet moved through the legal channels. Maya sat on a plastic chair with her phone buzzing so hard it vibrated off the armrest. She did not answer. Her daughter needed oxygen, not headlines. A social worker recognized her from the news and tried to take a photo. Maya turned away. The next morning, while Amara slept, Maya stepped outside and saw a black car waiting at the curb. The driver held a sign with her name. Ahmed's assistant called again. "Mr. Al-Mansur needs to see you immediately. It's about the offer and about your daughter." Maya felt a cold certainty in her chest. The easy part was winning the game. Whatever came next would cost much more. The black car did not take Maya to the hospital. It took her to Al-Mansur Tower, where a private elevator carried her to a floor that smelled of coffee and old paper. Ahmed was waiting in a smaller office than she expected. No glass walls, no assistants. Just a desk, a chessboard, and a television on the wall showing the same clip of her checkmate over and over. He did not smile when she walked in. He stood and said, "The money is already moving. Your rent is covered. For life, I do not break my word." Maya sat down slowly. Her uniform from the restaurant still smelled of saffron and exhaustion. She asked about her daughter. Ahmed nodded. I know about Amara. I know the insurance rejected the last procedure. I know the hospital called you twice this morning. That is not why I brought you here. He opened a drawer and removed a single envelope, yellowed at the edges. On the front, in handwriting Maya had not seen in 12 years, was her name, her father's handwriting. She could not breathe. Ahmed slid the envelope across the desk. Ravi wrote this a month before he died. He gave it to a friend who promised to deliver it if anything happened. That friend did not keep the promise. It reached me only after the video went viral. I have been looking for you for a long time, Maya. Longer than you know. He paused. I think Ravi knew you would stop playing, and he knew you would never ask for help. Maya opened the letter. The words were short. Play with your skull, not just your heart. Forgive me for leaving. The man who beats you with his hands has already lost. Find Ahmed Al-Mansur if you ever need a door. He owes me nothing, but he remembers. She read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and looked up. Ahmed was staring at the chessboard. Asked, why did you stop? She told him about Amara, about the money, about the silence that followed her father's death. And then she said something she had never told anyone. She had not stopped playing. She had gone underground. The room changed. Ahmed's expression shifted from sympathy to sharp attention. Underground, what does that mean? Maya explained. In Deira, there were nights when the only way to pay a hospital bill was to sit across from a stranger and win. She played under the name Ghost. No records, no federation, just cash on the table and a clock that did not care who was watching. She had won enough to keep Amara alive. She had also broken enough laws to destroy any chance of ever playing professionally again. Ahmed listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, that is a problem, because someone else knows. At that moment, Ahmed's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and turned it toward her. A video message from Karim, the businessman who had filmed the restaurant match. In the video, Karim sat in a dim room beside a man Maya recognized. It was one of the players she had beaten in Deira. The man held a fan of cash and smiled at the camera. Karim spoke directly to Ahmed. Tell the waitress to take her little rent story and disappear. Or this goes to the Chess Federation, the police, and every news outlet in Dubai. The headline will write itself. Billionaire's chess angel ran illegal gambling ring. Your company shares will love it. Maya's throat tightened. The legal weight of the threat landed like a stone in her chest. Gambling was a serious offense. Deportation was not off the table. Her daughter would lose her mother. Her mother in Kerala would lose her only support. Ahmed put the phone down, face unreadable. He said Karim was not just a business associate. He held 12% of Al-Mansur Holdings. He sat on the board. And he had been waiting for years to find a crack in Ahmed's reputation. But it got worse. The next morning, a courier delivered a notice to Maya's apartment. Her landlord had sold the building to a company owned by Karim. The notice said she had 96 hours to vacate. The rent-for-life agreement had not yet been registered, and Karim's lawyers argued the bet was not legally binding because it was made under the influence of alcohol. It did not matter that Ahmed had not been drinking. Paperwork was a weapon. Across the city, Amara's fever returned. A nurse called Maya while she stood holding the eviction notice. The words blurred together. Emergency surgery. Payment required before admission. Without it, the infection could reach her heart. Maya sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by boxes she could not afford to pack. Her phone glowed with thousands of messages from strangers who thought she was a hero. To them, the story was over. The waitress had won. The billionaire had paid. But the story was not over. It was just beginning to turn. Ahmed called that evening. His voice was quiet but firm. He said Karim had made one mistake. He had underestimated who he was fighting. Ahmed had not built a $3 billion empire by accepting threats. He had spent the day buying every outstanding debt on Maya's apartment building. By midnight, Karim no longer owned it. Ahmed did. The eviction notice was dead, but the deeper problem remained. Karim's evidence was still real. Maya had played for money. If it became public, the Chess Federation could ban her before she ever played a sanctioned match. And if she was banned, Ahmed's offer to sponsor her return would collapse under the weight of scandal. Maya asked the only question that mattered. Why do you care what happens to me? Ahmed was silent for a long moment. Then he said, because your father was the first man who saw me as more than a street kid with dirty hands. He did not just beat me at chess. He told me that my anger was making me predictable. He told me to stop playing with my fists and start playing with my skull. That is why I built all of this, and that is why I will not let his daughter be erased by a man like Karim. The next morning, Ahmed's lawyers filed a preemptive declaration with the Chess Federation, stating that Maya had participated in unlicensed matches only out of medical necessity, with full documentation of her daughter's condition. It was a gamble. The Federation could offer compassion or they could enforce the rules. Karim, meanwhile, contacted every journalist he knew. By noon, headlines appeared online. Waitress hero had secret gambling past. The public began to turn. Some called her a con artist. Others said the four-move win was staged. Ahmed watched the online rage build and told Maya to pack a bag. He was taking her somewhere safe, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed with an official-looking email from the Chess Federation. They had opened an emergency ethics review. Her eligibility was suspended pending a full hearing. 3 days from now, the same day Amara was scheduled for surgery, the same day Karim planned to release the full video. And then the final blow landed. A second email, this one from a reporter, asked for comment on a new allegation. Karim had found an old police report from Kerala. In it, Maya had been accused of falsifying documents to obtain a passport for Amara. The charges had been dropped, but the record still existed. It was enough to start deportation proceedings. Karim was not just trying to take her rent, he was trying to erase her entirely. Maya stared at the screen, the world spinning. She had won in 4 moves, but the game was no longer chess. It was survival. That night, Ahmed arrived at her apartment with 2 lawyers and a single chess piece, her father's favorite, a white knight. He placed it in her hand and said, "We have 3 days. We can present your story to the public before Karim controls the narrative. We can show them the mother, not the gambler, but we need one thing. We need you to stop hiding." Maya looked at the eviction notice, the hospital bill, the email from the Federation. She thought of Amara sleeping in the next room, unaware that her mother's entire life was collapsing. Then she looked at Ahmed. What happens if we lose? Ahmed met her gaze. Then we lose everything. But if we do nothing, we lose anyway. The question is not whether you can win. The question is whether you are willing to play the longest game of your life. Maya closed her fist around the white knight. "Then tell me what you need." Ahmed smiled for the first time in days. And for the first time, she saw the man her father had warned her about, the one who did not lose. The next 3 days did not feel like days. They felt like 3 different lives stacked on top of each other. Ahmed's legal team worked through the night, filing injunctions, requesting emergency hearings, and building a public case that painted Maya not as a criminal, but as a mother who had been forced into impossible choices. They released a video on Tuesday morning. It was 3 minutes long. Maya sat in front of a plain wall, wearing her uniform, and spoke directly into the camera. She did not defend herself. She simply showed the receipts, the hospital bills, the eviction notices. The text messages from Karim threatening to destroy her if she did not walk away from the rent agreement. Within 4 hours, the video had 12 million views. The public turned again, harder this time. Karim's name trended for the wrong reasons, but Karim was not finished. On Tuesday night, he leaked the Kerala police report to a tabloid. The headline screamed, "Waitress hero accused of passport fraud." The report was old, dismissed, but it did not matter. The damage was immediate. Sponsors who had offered Maya endorsements pulled back. The Federation extended its suspension. Even some fans who had defended her began to waver. Maya watched the numbers drop and felt the familiar weight of the world pressing on her chest. But Ahmed's team found the crack. The police report had been sealed by court order when the charges were dropped. Only a government official or a judge could have accessed it. Within hours, Ahmed's lawyers traced the leak to a clerk in the Public Records Office. The clerk confessed that Karim had paid him 50,000 dirhams. The confession was recorded. The leak was not just an attack on Maya, it was a crime. Ahmed filed a lawsuit for defamation and illegal disclosure. Karim's legal team scrambled. Wednesday morning arrived with no sleep. Amara's surgery was scheduled for noon. The ethics review was scheduled for 2. Maya sat in the hospital waiting room, wearing a borrowed blouse and holding her phone like a lifeline. The Federation had agreed to let her testify via video conference. At exactly 2 o'clock, the screen blinked on. 7 members of the ethics committee sat behind a long table. Maya could see Karim's witness on another screen, his face blurred but his voice unmistakable. He repeated his claim that Maya had played for money. He described the illegal matches in Deira, the cash changing hands, the players who had lost everything. But when the committee asked for dates, he stumbled. When they asked for names, he gave 3 and 2 of them were dead. When they asked why he had waited years to come forward, he said he had been afraid. Then Ahmed's lawyer asked a single question: how much did Karim pay you to record that video? The witness blinked. He denied it. The lawyer produced a bank transfer from Karim's personal account to the witness's brother. The amount was $20,000. The witness's face collapsed. The committee called for a recess. When they returned 20 minutes later, the chairwoman announced that Maya Hassan was cleared of all wrongdoing. The suspension was lifted. Maya did not cry. She did not celebrate. She was holding Amara's hand in the operating room recovery bay. The surgery had gone well, the doctor said. The infection was gone. Amara was sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. Maya looked at the screen, at the committee members nodding, at Ahmed standing in the back of the room with his hands clasped. She whispered thank you to no one and everyone. That evening, Ahmed came to the hospital. He brought flowers and a legal envelope. The rent-for-life agreement was official. He had also arranged for a private tutor to help Maya prepare for her return to competitive chess. And he had established the Ravi Hassan Memorial Chess Fund with an initial donation of $10 million to support young players from underprivileged backgrounds. Maya listened as he spoke, but her eyes kept drifting to Amara, sleeping with color in her cheeks. After a long silence, she asked him the question that had been sitting in her chest for days. Why did you choose that restaurant? He had been to dozens of restaurants. Why this one? Ahmed looked out the window at the city lights. He said he had chosen it because he knew she worked there. Then he told her the truth. 8 months earlier, Ahmed had been reviewing his foundation's anonymous medical grants. One file caught his eye, a pediatric heart case in Deira. The child's name was Amara Hassan. The mother was listed as Maya Hassan, former junior chess champion. Ahmed recognized the name instantly. He had searched for Ravi's family for years, ever since his own rise made it possible. He found that Maya was working double shifts, struggling to pay bills, playing underground to survive. He could have approached her directly, but he wanted to know if she was still the player her father had described. So he arranged to have dinner at the restaurant. He did not expect the chess book on her break. He did not expect the bet. And he certainly did not expect to lose in 4 moves. He laughed at the memory, but his eyes were serious. I knew who you were from the moment I walked in. I just wanted to see if you remembered. Maya stared at him. She thought about the game, the way he had opened so carelessly, the way he had fallen into the trap. He had not been careless. He had been testing her, and she had passed. But that was not the final surprise. Ahmed reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. It was a young man and an older man standing beside a chessboard. The older man was Ravi. The younger man was Ahmed. On the back, in faded ink, were the words, "I taught you to use your skull. Now use it for her." Ahmed explained that after their famous match, Ravi had become his mentor. They had stayed in touch for years, exchanging letters and chess puzzles. When Ravi knew he was dying, he wrote to Ahmed and asked him to look after Maya if she ever needed help. Ahmed had tried, but by the time he found her, she had already disappeared into the city. He had never stopped looking. Then he hired a private investigator who found the anonymous medical grant file, and everything led to that restaurant. Maya sat with the photograph in her hands. Her father had not abandoned her. He had left a door open, and it had taken all these years for her to walk through it. She thought about the scholar's mate, about the way her father's lessons had saved her life without her even realizing. She had won 4 moves, but her father had won a much longer game. He had taught a street kid to use his skull. That street kid had become a billionaire. And that billionaire had found his daughter in a restaurant and kept a promise made to a dead man. Maya looked at Ahmed and said, "Thank you for not giving up." He shook his head. "You never needed me to save you. You just needed to remember who you were. And now the world knows." The room fell quiet. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed. Amara stirred, opened her eyes, and asked for water. Maya turned to her daughter, and for the first time in years, the knot in her chest loosened. The bill was paid, the rent was gone, the future was open. She had beaten a billionaire in 4 moves, but the real victory had taken a lifetime, and it was just beginning. The next morning, a reporter asked Maya what she planned to do now. She said she would play chess again, not for money, not for revenge, but because her father had taught her that the board was the one place where she never had to be invisible. Then she took her daughter's hand and walked out of the hospital into the sunlight that had been waiting for her all along. What Maya found in that sunlight was not just a fresh start. It was proof that the games we play in the dark can still end in light. For years, she had believed that her father's death had closed the door on the life she was meant to live. But a chess book on a break, a boastful billionaire, and 4 moves of pure instinct had reopened it. The rent was covered. Her daughter was healthy, and the woman who once hid her brilliance in a Daira apartment now stood in the open. The real lesson of this story is not that kindness always comes from billionaires or that every waitress carries a hidden talent. It is that the people we look past every day are often playing the longest, hardest games. Maya was not lucky, she was prepared. Her father had taught her to use her skull, and when the moment came, she did not hesitate. Ahmed Al-Mansur was not just a rich man with a guilty conscience. He was the living proof that a single act of decency from a stranger can echo for decades. So the question remains, how many Mayas are still out there, invisible and underestimated, waiting for one moment to show the world what they can do? How many Ahmeds are carrying promises they have not yet kept? And how often do we mistake a simple uniform for a simple mind? If this story made you think about the quiet geniuses around you, let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were sitting at that table? Would you have taken the bet, or would you have walked away? Like this video if you believe that respect should not depend on someone's salary. And subscribe to the channel for more stories about people who refuse to be counted out. Because in the end, the most powerful move is not the 4-move checkmate. It is the decision to keep playing when the world has already written you off. Maya made that decision long before she touched the board, and that is why she won. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next story.